What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie Beau is Afraid. Here's a quick synopsis. While trying to visit his mother, the very anxious Beau Wasserman misses his flight and then is told his mother has passed away and frantically tries to get to her funeral on time. The film stars Joaquin Phoenix, Patti LuPone, Amy Ryan, Nathan Lane, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Parker Posey, and Richard Kind. Standout performances. Joaquin Phoenix is not only the only actor who is capable of giving this performance that he does in this movie, he's also one of the only leading men willing to play a character like Beau. Most guys in his status want to play brave and heroic characters, while Beau is an emotionally vulnerable character, and it should not at all surprise you that Phoenix is the guy who wants to play him. In Spike Jonze's Her, he plays a character dealing with loneliness, and in Beau is Afraid, he's playing a guy with high levels of anxiety. Phoenix is at his absolute best when he is playing a character with an emotional arc, and that's what Beau is Afraid offers the actor a chance to do. Phoenix has some big movies on the way. Napoleon, which will see him reunite with his Gladiator director Ridley Scott, co-starring Oscar-nominated Vanessa Kirby, and the sequel to Joker with Lady Gaga playing Harley Quinn. I was a big fan of the first Joker movie. It was more than just a Martin Scorsese tribute. Phoenix is on a great run of filmmakers he's working with. You have Todd Phillips with Joker, Mike Mills with Come On, Come On, and Ari Aster with Beau is Afraid. Phoenix is rare in that his work in film is both consistent and shocking at the same time. He has acted for decades now, yet his career path is far from predictable. Even when he's in more of a franchise movie like Joker, he does something in it that you don't see in those kind of movies. It's why he won the Oscar for that film. And this doesn't get talked about enough, but Joker really did re-establish Joaquin Phoenix as a major movie star, as before that he was starring in smaller movies that not a lot of people have seen. He's always been a brilliant actor, but I think in the last few years he's back in the spotlight doing those bigger movies, and now people are paying more attention to just how great of an actor that this guy really is. Remember, the early part of his career, everyone was seeing his movies because they were big movies like Signs, like Gladiator, Village, and Walk the Line, but this last decade of his career has been mostly in smaller movies, these James Gray directed films that most audiences haven't seen. Joker really reintroduced him to most mainstream audiences. Actress Patti LuPone is best known for her work on Broadway, winning 2 Tony Awards. In Beau is Afraid, she plays Beau's mother, and I don't want to reveal too much about her arc in the movie, but she is giving an incredible performance, particularly in one amazing scene with Phoenix. Depending on how you see this movie, you might view her character as the antagonist of the entire film. I also want to highlight the other great supporting performers in the movie. You have Nathan Lane from The Birdcage, The Lion King, and The Producers, Amy Ryan from Gone Baby Gone, The Office, and A Beautiful Boy, Parker Posey from Dazed and Confused, Scream 3, and Columbus, Stephen McKinley Henderson from Lady Bird, Dune, and Causeway, and Richard Kind from Spin City, A Serious Man, and Bombshell. These are some of the best character actors working today, and all are used perfectly in Beau is Afraid. Like, as someone who's grown up with Nathan Lane and seeing him in a lot of things, this is the type of movie you want Nathan Lane to be in, because this movie knows what to do with Nathan Lane. He is hilarious in this movie. The same with Amy Ryan. I watched her in The Office. She is very funny. I know she's been in some more dramatic things lately, but this movie really takes advantage of her comedic side. Like many people, I really liked and admired the first 2 films from writer-director Ari Aster, Hereditary starring Toni Collette, and Midsommar starring Florence Pugh. Both films made people question if they were truly in the horror genre. And with Beau is Afraid, it's impossible to categorize what genre this movie is in. He's at that place, Aster is, where he is his own genre. Ari Aster told USA Today he was trying to make something funny and sad. I feel like the filmmakers who are genres in and of themselves are Quentin Tarantino, Wes Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson, Robert Eggers, Jordan Peele, Damien Chazelle, and Aster. For example, just watch Chazelle's Babylon. You can't place that movie in any one genre. And what do those list of filmmakers all have in common? They are writer-directors. They have the most control of anyone on their movies. That's how these movies become singular, because they are led by a singular voice. They are not hired guns. Ari Aster is not going to be hired by Marvel to direct the next Iron Man movie. He is originating the movies that he is making. And I think that does one of two things. It gives him the most control, and it also kind of gives you a cult following, because you get the most praise from when your movies are good. So when Hereditary becomes a hit, they all give the credit to Ari Aster, and rightfully so. He's the man who came out with that movie. He's the man who came out with Midsommar. So he is going to get the most praise. That's why there are Wes Anderson fans. They are fans of the type of movies that Wes Anderson makes, because they are fans of him themselves. And I think that's the best thing to be as a director, to have your own fan base. People are going to see Beau is Afraid because they are fans of Ari Aster. Don't get me wrong, there are great directors who are not writers, like Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese do not write most of the movies they make, yet they are still two of the best directors of all time. But I just feel like we're in the climate with movies that the people getting the most credit are the writer-directors, because they have the most control, they have a vision. And there is a world where these directors themselves become more mainstream, like we've seen it with Jordan Peele, with Get Out, Us, and Nope. All three of those movies were massive hits made by a big studio. I'm not sure Ari Aster is ever going to get to that level, but it is a possibility that he gets so popular that his movies become hits. It's almost like Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan made Batman, but then after that, he made original movies. These guys can become that without making Batman now. I think that's the case. I don't think Ari Aster needs to make a superhero movie to become super popular. He's already getting popular by word of mouth. His movies are going to continue to get bigger. He's getting bigger stars. Like, this is his third movie, yet it stars Joaquin Phoenix, one of the biggest movie stars on planet Earth. The directors with the biggest careers nowadays are writer-directors. What's different with this movie than Aster's other two films is Beau is Afraid has become super divisive, with some calling it a 3-hour self-indulgent slog, and there are moments when watching it where I thought the movie was about to go completely off the reservation and lose me completely. But every time I felt that way, the movie would respond with what I view as the best scenes of Ari Aster's career. I would not call this his best movie. That's still Midsommar in my opinion, but it's his most impressive. The movie tries to get you, the audience, to feel what the protagonist is going through, which is anxiety, similar to how The Father tries to get you to feel what it's like to have dementia, or how Sound of Metal attempts to get you to feel what it's like to be deaf. And I found Beau is Afraid taking that approach to be super effective. And while this movie has received mixed praise from moviegoers and critics alike, here's what the legend himself, Martin Scorsese, said about the director and his film. Quote, "The film was remarkable for me on different levels. The second time I saw it, I noticed the technical artistry behind it. The first time, I didn't know what it was about. Nobody had told me anything about it. I was impressed by the language of it, which was so unique and so original. The risk-taking is so unique and so different and so powerful, and there aren't many filmmakers who can do that on that level today." The director also compared the film to a Kubrick classic, Barry Lyndon. Quote, "They got up there, they were furious, they hated it, 15 to 20 years later, they can't stop watching it. Something happened in terms of the originality. When it's that original, you go into it, it's like a bullfight. You go into it and you're in the arena. So basically what Scorsese is saying is that Beau is Afraid is a movie that is going to grow over time substantially. Like right now, it's a movie that's misunderstood, and there are a lot of great movies that are misunderstood back in the day but are now thought of as cult classics. I feel like you're hearing that a lot about a lot of movies lately, that this movie is good but it's misunderstood. I felt that way about Babylon. I feel that way about Beau is Afraid. It feels like people don't want to be challenged by movies anymore, that they just want the movie to make them feel good about their day, that they just want to go home and watch a movie that's fun and entertaining. I like challenging movies, and Beau is Afraid is a challenging movie. Like I said, there were moments in the movie that I really wanted to give up on it, but every time I felt that way, the movie won me back over, and I felt that way about Babylon. I had to watch that movie from beginning to end to understand what was going on, and I know some of this is the idea that these movies are way too long. Why are they making movies that are 3 hours that aren't that fun and entertaining? And I understand that argument. But I personally feel like some of these bad reviews for a movie like Beau is Afraid is more about the fact that the movie does not feel like a fun popcorn movie and not about the movie itself. Like, this isn't an actual critique of the movie. It's about, this isn't what I wanted the movie to be. I don't think that's how you should view movies going in. Yes, you have a thought of how you want a movie to end up, but just because that isn't what the movie is does not mean the movie is bad. This movie is not going to be a movie for everyone, and I understand that as well. And maybe to some people you have a valid reason as to why it's bad, but it can't just be bad because it's 3 hours and not super entertaining. Oscar chances. I personally would be surprised if Joaquin Phoenix gets a Best Leading Actor nomination for Beau is Afraid. He deserves it, but his nominations have been for more mainstream roles like Johnny Cash and the Joker. The acting nominee that I think is going to come from this movie is Patti LuPone. She's definitely an early frontrunner for Best Supporting Actress. I also believe it's about time Ari Aster gets recognition for being one of the best filmmakers working today, but I have serious doubts he'll get nominated for Beau is Afraid, neither for his direction or the script. The Oscars usually don't go for movies this weird, although I will point out Everything Everywhere All at Once just won Best Picture and a bunch of other categories, but that movie was universally beloved by critics. That is not the case for Beau is Afraid. It's a divisive movie, which is what Ari Aster says he wants the movie to be, telling Yahoo, quote, "We always knew that it was going to be divisive. Early on, I decided that I couldn't compromise on this one. If I was going to make it, it needed to be what it is. All I can say is that I love the movie. I'm so proud of it. I stand behind it completely, and I hope it grows for people." And I really admire that by Aster, that he isn't always trying to make the most popular movie he could, and clearly he's not, because you can see his other movies. Hereditary became popular, but that on paper does not feel like a super popular mainstream movie. The same for Midsommar. I mean, these movies got talked about because they were relatable and because they are very good. It's not because on paper they were automatic hits. He, the director, is the reason that these movies are really good, and he's the reason that, in my opinion, Beau is Afraid is a really good movie. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this movie, but this isn't a movie that's going to hit everyone at the same time, and maybe Martin Scorsese is right. In 10 to 15 years, we might be talking about how much of a masterpiece Beau is Afraid really is. And I do want to talk more about the Oscars, because that is something that annoys me most about them. They won't nominate a weird movie like Beau is Afraid, made by an auteur filmmaker, and at the same time, they also won't, for the most part, nominate blockbusters. If you're going to ignore one of those two things, you have to embrace the other one, and I'd much prefer them nominate Beau is Afraid over a superhero movie. The Oscars are supposed to reward excellent filmmaking, and although not not perfect, Beau is Afraid has that in bunches. The mixed reviews are going to be the thing that holds this movie back at the Oscars, and I find that to be weird because I find these reviews, again, I have problems with them because they're not saying the movie wasn't well made. That's what I think reviews should be. Not, do you love this movie? Do you relate to this movie? Is this movie fun and entertaining? Saying a movie is bad to me is saying that the movie is not well made. This movie is super well made. It should be nominated for cinematography. It should be nominated for the screenplay. The performances should be nominated. The movie is well made. You just don't like it. You giving it a bad review is saying it's a bad movie, and that's where there's this weird in-between. A bad review does not mean this is a bad movie. Nobody, in my opinion, has given a real reason as to why this is a bad movie other than it's not the movie I wanted it to be. And again, I hate to do this because I don't really care for Rotten Tomatoes all the time, but it's so ridiculous that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a movie I'll admit I have not seen yet, has a higher Rotten Tomato score than Beau is Afraid. Like, that just doesn't make sense because it's popular, it's better. That's what you're saying. If more people saw Beau is Afraid would get better reviews. That's why I think reviews for these kind of movies, I just don't understand. You're basically dissing Beau is Afraid because the mass population isn't a super fan of it. When in reality, all you should be judging is the movie itself. That is what I am doing. I am judging the movie Beau is Afraid, and I'm here to tell you it's a really good movie, led by one of our great actors, directed by one of our great filmmakers. That is the reason to see this movie. I don't need anything else. Overall, I like a movie that challenges you as an audience member and gets better as it goes on, and that's how I would describe Beau is Afraid as. It's also a story that so many are going to connect to, and that's something that Aster is very good at. Midsommar was a movie about breakups, and Beau is Afraid is about living with anxiety. Two real-life things that almost everyone deals with in some form or another. Many have pointed this out about Ari Aster, and I'll say it because I think it's interesting. He could be way more popular than he really is. If he just stayed within the horror genre, he could have become the king of horror, and he could be making hit horror movie after hit horror movie. He's obviously not in it for that reason. He's the type of filmmaker you want to make a movie within every genre, and then he becomes the genre himself, and that's what he's doing with Beau is Afraid. There's a mix of comedy, there's a mix of horror, there's a mix of an adventure film. Aster has said that he's next going to make a Western, which will see him once again work with Joaquin Phoenix. I just want to see every movie that Ari Aster is capable of making. I really liked his horror movies, although I would argue with anyone that Midsommar is not a horror movie. It was just popular because it became a meme. Hereditary is the movie that a lot of people want Ari Aster to continue to make, and I'm not in that camp. I want to see every Ari Aster movie imaginable, and he is one of those directors I want my favorite movie stars to work with. He's free for free, getting tremendous performances. Toni Collette in Hereditary should have been nominated for an Oscar. Florence Pugh in Midsommar should have been nominated for an Oscar, and Joaquin Phoenix in Beau is Afraid should be nominated for an Oscar. I also want to see Ari Aster make a big studio movie if that's what he wants to do with his vision. Like, if he has a movie that costs $200 million, I want to see that movie, and hopefully a studio will give him a chance to make that kind of movie. Robert Eggers, a director he's usually compared to, got the chance to make that kind of movie with The Northman, and it was a brilliant movie. I would love to see Ari Aster's version of that movie. I would love a studio to give Ari Aster a blank check to make whatever kind of movie he wanted to make. Because for me, the guy hasn't missed yet, and he's made 3 movies and has put himself on the path to being one of the major forces in modern movie making. I find Ari Aster to be similar to Darren Aronofsky. I think he's that kind of filmmaker where his movies are brilliant. They're also super polarizing at the same time, and both directors get the absolute best performances out of their actors. Sky is the limit for Aster as a film director. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out Beau is Afraid. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about the movie Scream 6, starring Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, Courtney Cox, and Hayden Panettiere. So tune into that and please rate, review, and subscribe.